Hello, and thank you for joining us today on this very important episode of the Mom Jeans podcast. This is our very first current events episode. Today, we will be covering the very disheartening topic of the alleged Portland area serial killer. This case is still under investigation. Information shared in this podcast has been pulled from different articles and sources. You can find the resources used in this podcast in the description below. The ideas, thoughts, and opinions shared on this podcast today are not a direct reflection of the Mom Jeans podcast. This is simply a report of information that has been provided to the public. Let me emphasize our deepest condolences to the victims and their families. No person or family should have to endure what these individuals have been through. Let's review what we know so far. The remains of 6 women under 40 have been recovered within a 100-mile radius in the Portland metro area. Out of all of the ongoing investigations, only one has been officially ruled a homicide by investigators. As I was researching the disappearance of the 6 women, I came across a very interesting article in the U.S. Sun. The article was about Miss Charity Perry, one of the victims whose body was found in Ainsworth Park. The opening line reads, "A mom of one of 6 women found dead in suspicious circumstances in Portland, Oregon, has shared her daughter's last known movements as police continue to investigate the cause of her death." Further in the article it reads, "Desperately searching for answers about what happened to her daughter, Charity's mom, Diana Allen, shared with the U.S. Sun the 24-year-old's last known movements." Charity had been living in a tent in Vancouver, a neighboring city just to the north of Portland. According to Diana, Charity, who suffered from schizophrenia and drug addiction, was seen at an open-air fentanyl market in Portland in early March, where she suffered an overdose. Charity was taken to the hospital and revived with a dose of Narcan. However, she was later released on March 6th without any verification of her address or a check of her background. Diana, who was listed as Charity's emergency contact, was also not informed or alerted about the incident. The article goes on to directly quote Diana Allen. "I'm not sure why. Every other time they've called, and I really have no problem picking her up or helping her figure out a plan. But the last time, they never called, and they just sent her out the door. I don't know much about where she went from there. That's the last time she was on the grid. But I believe she'd been in the Clackamas area sometime between the end of March and the first week of April." Diana is quoted again later on in the article. "But without the answers, your mind can run wild. I know some of the details because my biggest concerns was violence, and I know she didn't die violently." Diana is quoted again later on in the article. The numbers are concerning, and then when you start adding suspicious circumstances on top of it, you're just trying to figure out what's going on. So I can't say that definitively, but I am concerned there might be. I've lived here a long time, and I've never heard of so many bodies being found, period, let alone in such a short space of time. The article in the U.S. Sun goes on to quote extremely personal things said by Diana Allen, and if you wish to read those things, I urge you to go take a look at the article in the description below. However, due to the extremely personal nature of the quotes, I do not feel comfortable reading them on the podcast. While I was researching this case, I found quite a few articles and videos regarding the open-air fentanyl markets in Portland and their relation to the case. The next article I will be sharing with you is from kptv.com and Fox 12 Oregon. This article goes on to quote a Joseph Giacalone, a retired NYPD sergeant and now adjunct professor at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I will be reading his quotes from the article. He said, quote, "You can't have these tent cities and these open-air drug markets, which only breed this kind of behavior. It doesn't need to be a nefarious reason, doesn't have to be a homicide." End of quote. He said, quote, "If you think that these are the only 6 bodies in that area, I think you'd be mistaken." End of quote. He said, quote, "There needs to be a full investigation, including cadaver dogs and everything else." End of quote. He said, quote, "If you look at the history of serial killers, they always prey on the most vulnerable and specifically people who are drug users, homeless, or prostitutes, because they're transient. People aren't really looking for them after a certain period of time, and the groups that those individuals hang around with, whether it's the drug scene or the prostitution scene, are not really that friendly with the police." End of quote. He said, quote, "If a serial killer was involved in any of this, he or she has the perfect cover. We have people coming from different countries, different parts of the state, the open-air drug scene, maybe prostitution, and all these other things, and you have the city that has the abolish the police movement. Talk about a serial killer's sweet spot." To finish up this report, I thought there was one interesting piece of information that was shared in both articles. I will read verbatim this information from the Fox 12 article, but similar information can be found in the Sun article as well. A search of the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System database revealed at least 4 other Jane Does were found in the region in 2022. A woman in Lowell, Oregon in May, another in Salem, Oregon in November, and 2 more women in Woodland, Washington in March and April. One of them had been struck by a train, 2 were found on the side of rural roads, and the 4th was found floating in the Columbia River. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Current Events on the Mom Jeans podcast. If you have any information regarding these ongoing investigations, I have included the number for the tip line in the description below.